Hello, my name is Lakey, and welcome to the DPS Diary. This episode is going to be centered around dungeon and solo content on Magicka Nightblade. Right now, Nightblade is lacking a bit in raid content, but I believe it's still really good in 4-man because of high ulti gen that comes from passives and soul harvest, as well as insane survivability with Swallow Soul, Siphon, and Bow Proc all giving really big heals. These setups are what we use for dungeon carries, so they will be extra sweaty. Let's talk about food. Buy stat or ghastly? The answer is buy stat when you wear Thrassian and ghastly when you don't. Thrassian is OP in dungeons and solo content. For every kill you get, you receive a stack of Slode's Embrace, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 23. At max stacks, Thrassian gives you 1,150 weapon and spell damage, which is gigantic. The only problem is when your group dies, you'll probably die too, resetting your stacks. But don't worry, I have setups for Thrassian and non-Thrassian in this video. Let's get into gear. First, I'll give you 3 Thrassian setups: Trash, short bosses, and long bosses. Next, I'll give you a non-Thrassian setup for trash and bosses. And finally, a beginner setup to use in dungeons until you get the correct gear. Note that if you decide to use Inferno instead of daggers in any of these builds, it should be a precise Inferno. Okay, let's start with the setups. We're going to be running False Gods, Soulzons, Thrassian, and One Piece Falcon Scoria with a Maelstrom Inferno. We have False Gods on because we're in buy stat. We'll be struggling with sustain, but it's okay because Thrassian will make up the damage difference for us and leave us with higher damage in the end. Next is the One Piece Falcon Scoria. This is pretty important in trash because ads will often have really low pen on them, so the helmet just helps a lot. We're using weapon damage and chance on our jewelry since we most likely won't have a Templar in group. This is a newer change as a result of the recent hybrid changes. Next is the burst setup for bosses. We're going to be rocking Mechanical Acuity, 4 Pisondir, Balors, and a Maelstrom Inferno. The reason why our gear is medium is because it does more damage at the cost of pen. But since we have Balors on, our pen will be fine when we pop our ultimate. Next is our setup for longer boss fights. This is probably the most normal setup so far, with Boss A, Slime Craw, Thrassian, and Maelstrom Inferno. For the last set, it's up to you. I prefer Kinross and Zogvin, but if you don't want to try hard, then just use War Maiden. And now we're talking about non-Thrassian setups. This is our trash setup. The difference between this and the Thrassian setup is we're dropping the One Piece and Mythic to fit in a monster set. I believe Stormfist is the best option, but you could run something like Grothdar instead. Next is the boss setup. We're going to be running Stormfist, Boss A, Kinross or Zogvin, and a Maelstrom Inferno. Again, feel free to try War Maiden if you don't like tracking the stacks of Kinross and Zogvin. And finally, the beginner setup. I would get some Mother Sorrow, Julianos, and any monster set or 2-piece that will hold you off until you get the correct gear. I also recommend running normal Maelstrom until you get the Inferno, since it does not matter if your Maelstrom is perfected. Just go run it and you'll see a big DPS jump from it. It's time to talk about skills. For trash, we're running Swallow Soul for the cracked single target heal, Sap Essence if we're in dual wield, and Pulsar if we're in an Inferno staff. These are both great AoEs, but Pulsar applies Mangle to ads and has execute damage to it, while Sap Essence is only a heal. Next is Merciless. This skill in trash you can cast if you need it, but I like to save it at 5 stacks for passive damage. Of course, we have Impale on for passive crit and single target to enemies. Camo Hunter is in theory better than Inner Light in solo and 4-man content. If you have a healer casting combat prayer though, you should take it off and put Inner Light on. And finally, Soul Harvest. This skill will give you ultimate back every time you kill something, making it super easy to spam ultimates. For our back bar AoEs, we're running Orb, Wall, and Path. These are all just really good AoEs for trash. Cast Path in between trash packs to get a little speed boost, and Shade is just good damage, so we have it on. For the last skill, there's a lot of options. Channel Acceleration is good in between trash packs to get force, Siphoning will heal on light attacks and give better sustain, and Proxy is good for more burst on the trash packs. Of course, we are running a Destro ultimate on the back bar for big AoE damage. Now it's time for the boss setup. We're keeping Swallow Soul, we're swapping out Sap or Debilitate, and this skill will actually apply Magicka Seal to the target that it's on, so you'll have better sustain. Our bow comes back again with big damage as well as our execute. Again, use Camo Hunter if you're not in Kinro's or have a healer. If you do, then swap it to Inner Light. And lastly, we have Soul Harvest, of course, for execute after we cast our Destro. I've noticed on Nightblade, boss fights can be hard to sustain, so I highly recommend swapping Orb for Scalding Rune or Anti-Cavalry Caltrops so that you don't run out of mag completely. Of course, we still have Path and Unstable Wall, Shade, and Siphoning with Fiery Rage for big bursts when the fight starts. For CP, we're going to be running Biting Aura, Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, and Master at Arms. For red CP, we'll run Boundless Vitality, Fortified, Rejuvenation, and Celerity. For races, these are your options: High Elf, Dark Elf, and Khajiit. While I think Khajiit and Nightblade do synergize well with each other, I still believe it is under High Elf and Dark Elf in terms of damage. For attributes, put them all into Magicka. For Mundus, always use the Thief, but if you don't have a tank or you're not getting the pen you need, you should swap to the Lover. For potions, we use Spell Power Potions. These can be crafted using Cornflower, Lady Smock, and Water Hyacinth. And that's it. This has been the DPS Diary. Thank you for watching. Share this video and subscribe. Thank you for watching.